no footballer can stay forever. It's pretty sad, right? It doesn't matter if they're the best, the worst, or how much we love them. The only undefeated player in sports is Father Time. This also means that for every legend of our beautiful game, there's a send-off. One final match, either before retirement or before they take one last payday off into the sunset out of the eyes of the masses. Today, we're looking at 7 football legends and the highs and the lows of their final games. And we're starting with a recent one that hits a little bit close to home. It's Cristiano Ronaldo. Who would have thought that just over a year after his historic return to Manchester United, Ronaldo's relationship with the club would become poisoned. But in between his famed interview with Piers Morgan and his left field move to Saudi Arabia, he played in his final ever World Cup. And this is where we find his send-off. Portugal started the knockouts with a 6-1 domination of Switzerland. And for a moment, even to the skeptics, it looked like they could have won it all in Qatar. The headlines, rather, were all about Ronaldo being left on the bench after a public feud with coach Fernando Santos. And in their quarterfinal matchup against Morocco, the captain was benched once more. It was a bad look already, but it got even worse when Youssef En-Nesyri put the underdogs 1-0 up. Ronaldo only saw the field with 40 minutes left, and his impact wasn't enough to erase the deficit. When that final whistle sounded, the entire Portugal team fell to their knees. Not just for themselves, not just to their country, but for Ronaldo. Of course, this season we can still watch him play for Al Nassr, but outside of Europe for Ronaldo, it's not the same. That famed video of him walking down the dugout with tears in his eyes was the last we'll ever see of Cristiano on the biggest stage. Football is cruel, eh? It can get crueler though. Just ask Zinedine Zidane. If you're into football, you've heard this story before, but for those unfamiliar, I'll recap. It was 2006, and Zidane, aged 34, had his country on his back en route to the World Cup final against Italy. 7 minutes into the match, he scored an audacious Panenka from the spot, but after an equalizer from Marco Materazzi, the teams were level deep into extra time. Then, out of the blue, the 2 goal scorers were seen exchanging some words. It's said that Materazzi mentioned something about Zidane's sister. The Frenchman did not let that slide, so walked up in front of Materazzi and after a few seconds, headbutted him. Zidane got himself sent off when his country needed him the most, and Italy went on to win the World Cup on penalties. Probably to this day, the craziest moment in the history of the World Cup. There are even sculptures of this headbutt in France. Your grandchildren are going to hear about this game. And this was the last ever time Zinedine Zidane stepped on a football pitch. It wasn't just his last game for France. It wasn't just his last game before a little hiatus for a few years. No, straight up his final match. The last image of Zidane's astounding career is this: a shameful walk past the World Cup trophy, likely knowing that he had doomed his country to failure. While that is wildly unfortunate, at least you can say that Zinedine Zidane went out on top. Well, you can't say the same for Ronaldo Nazario. I've covered how great this player was in his prime, but the biggest tragedy with Ronaldo Nazario is that his prime should have lasted so much longer. Several injuries to the knee and a disease called hypothyroidism, which causes severe weight gain, meant that we were robbed of what could have been the greatest career of all time. At the tail end of his career, he had a failed stint with AC Milan, where he only appeared 20 times in 2 seasons. Then he joined Corinthians back in Brazil on the road to retirement. When he did retire in 2011, he remarked, quote, "It's very hard to leave something that made me so happy. The head wants to go on, but the body can't take anymore." It was a sad day for football when he retired, but the phenomenon still had one more game in him. On the 7th of June 2011, he played one last time for Brazil in a friendly versus Romania. In one last send-off, he came off the bench to a standing ovation in Sao Paulo, helped his team to a win, and even for a stint, partnered with a 19-year-old Neymar in attack, who we'll come back to. As we see with Ronaldo, testimonials are always the best way to end a career, but unfortunately, sometimes they can turn a little sour. Just look at the final game of Steven Gerrard. He's a bona fide Liverpool legend, no matter the slip-ups. So when Gerrard announced that he was leaving the Reds at the end of 14-15, the farewell tour commenced. Almost every game was a standing ovation for Gerrard from Liverpool fans and opponents. But beyond that, unfortunately, it was a pretty rough season for them. They finished 6th in 14-15, which isn't bad, but far off of the title challenge they put off the season prior. Gerrard's last game at Anfield, of course, had that testimonial vibe, but Crystal Palace completely ruined it, taking a 3-1 victory. But that wasn't the last hurrah of the Liverpool captain. That would actually come 8 days later away at Stoke, where they lost 6-1. 6-1! I mean, spirits were still kept high as Gerrard scored the only goal for his team, granted, with some charitable defending helping him out. And when that final whistle blew, the feeling was still one of celebration for the guy, who then moved on to the MLS and then a mixed coaching career. And from one midfield great to another, our next spotlight is on Xavi. The Maestro's last game for Barcelona was actually supposed to be in 2014. But thanks to some convincing from Luis Enrique, Xavi instead took the Barcelona armband and played one more season. And what a decision it was. This was prime MSN, remember. What a team. They bagged 94 points in La Liga, narrowly beating out Real Madrid. They beat Bilbao in the Copa del Rey final after some messy magic. And although Xavi did have a proper farewell at Camp Nou, it meant that his true final game for Barcelona had a treble on the line. In the 2015 Champions League final against Juventus, he came on in the 78th minute for Andres Iniesta, and thanks to goals from Ivan Rakitic, Luis Suarez, and Neymar, Barca came out 3-1 winners, had won the treble, and Xavi got to lift the trophy. After Barcelona, of course, he retired in Qatar and began a coaching career. Now, fast forward a few years, and he's the coach of Les Couleurs. What a career, and what a player. Now, testimonials are cool and all, but what about the times where no one knows they're watching the last match of a legend? That is the case with Neymar, who a month ago was rumored with a magical return to Barcelona, but now, at 31, is off to Saudi Arabia. And what makes this sad ending for Neymar even sadder is that the guy didn't get anywhere near a proper send-off from PSG. In March this year, he underwent surgery and had to miss the business end of last season. The Parisian suffered another bitter Champions League run, leading to a protest against the direction of the club. A part of this protest, fans in front of Neymar's house demanding that he leaves. Despite this though, in July, Neymar said he wanted to stay and even joined the squad for preseason in Japan, all while Mbappe was having romantic talks with Real Madrid and Messi had moved on to the US. Neymar always seemed like the one to stay. On August 3rd, not even a month ago, he played against Jean Paul Motors, scoring 2 goals and getting an assist. 12 days later, he was an Al Hilal player. I got all my issues with Neymar going to Saudi this early, but I'll save him for another day. And while Neymar's departure from Paris was pretty sudden, you cannot say the same for David Beckham. He's a rare case of going to the MLS and then returning to Europe. After a successful stint in LA, Beckham was a free agent in 2013, and he got a call from Nasser Al-Khelaifi proposing one last dance before retirement. And that's what he did. It's crazy to think that PSG have had any kind of title drought ever, but alongside greats like Blaise Matuidi, Thiago Silva, and Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Beckham played a part in the beginning of their domination, winning them their first league title in nearly 20 years. 20 years! On the 18th of May, 2013, he was made captain in his final match against Brest. He assisted Matuidi from a corner, because of course he did, and then, with tears in his eyes, came off as a sub to a standing ovation. It was a great end to a historic career and marked the start of a new era for one of the biggest clubs in world football. Let me know in the comments, guys, do you remember watching any of these games? And how did they make you feel? And of course, let me know if I miss any big ones, because I probably did. Thank you guys so much for watching. Of course, you can show your support by liking or subscribing down below. My name is Julian, and ciao.